Hi, welcome to my video on the product of monomials. The product of monomials. Remember, a monomial is a one term, no addition or subtraction signs in the term. When multiplying monomials, you multiply the numerical coefficients of each term. That's, you multiply the numbers. And then you multiply the literal coefficients of each term, which are multiplying the variables. And then you combine both products, A and B above. Note, B to the M times B to the N is B to the Mn. That's multiplying exponentials with the same base. We add the exponents. And note that B is not equal to 0. Let's do some examples. Find the product of each. Well, 6 times 2 is 12, and we only have 1x. And negative 8 times 3y is a negative 24y. When you multiply unlike signs, you get a negative. When you multiply x by 4x, that's a 1 there. So 1 times 4 is 4. And x times x is x squared, because the coefficients are 1 and 1, and you add them. D, negative 2 times 8, negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. And x times x is x squared. Again, that's a 1 and a 1, so we add. E, we have, that's a 1 in front of the x squared there. 3 times 1 is 3. That's the numerical coefficients. The literal coefficients, they're the same, so we add. 2 and 2 is 4 when we multiply. F, we have negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, and that's a 1 there. So 2 plus 1 is 3. When you multiply, you add the exponents. And G, 10 times 4 is 40. That's the numerical coefficients, and that's a 1. 3 plus 1 is 4, so 40, a to the 4. And that's a 1 understood to be there, and so that's negative 1. 7 times negative 1 is a negative 7. And when you multiply the y's, same basis, you add to get a 6. 4 and 2 is 6. I, negative times negative is a positive. 9 times 2 is 18. And you have the same base of x. 3 plus 3 is 6. Now, pause your video and work the 9 of these out. And when you get them done, press play to see if you're right. Number 1, positive times a negative is a negative. 4 times 3 is 12. X times x is x squared, because there's a 1 and a 1. 7 times 5 is 35, and you only have an a. And that's a 1, so 9 times 1 is 9. X, and you add, you get a 5. Negative 6 times 4 is negative 24. A is the base, like bases, so that's a 1 and a 3 gives me a 4. And there's a 1 understood. 1 times 8 is 8. And y, there's a 1 exponent, so that's a 3. 1 plus 2 is 3. Negative times negative is a positive. 2 times 3 is 6. And that's a 1, so we get b to the 5. 4 plus 1 is 5. 4 b's, and 1 b is 5 b's. Negative times a positive is a negative, so it's negative 77. And that's x, that's a 1, and 5 is 6. And that's a 4, so negative 12 times 4 is negative 48. And there's only an x, no more x's to go with it. 5 eighths are 40, and we got y, we add the exponents, we get a 6. How'd you do? Hopefully everything is okay. More examples. Why I have this is that sometimes we have brackets around these, so 3 times 2 is 6, and we get an x and a y. So we have different variables, but we can't combine them because they're not like bases. And notice, this is understood to be a multiplication between these two. I don't have brackets around this, so that's a negative 20. I have a 1 there and a 2 there, so that's x cubed, and I only have 1y. And that's a 1 there, so 7 times 1 is 7. We have an a, there's a 1 and a 1, so it's a squared. We have a 1 and a b squared, so that's b cubed. And we have just a c. So notice they're different terms, so we can only combine the same basis and add the exponents. And as a negative 1 understood, so 10 times negative 1 is a negative 10. We have an x to the 1 and a 1, so that's x squared, because 1 plus 1 is 2. We have a y to the 1 and a y squared, so that's y cubed. 1 plus 2 is 3. W is to the 1, so that's 1 plus 4 is 5. Again, you can only combine the like bases when you're multiplying. And e, negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. That's the numerical coefficients. And I have no more x's, so that's just x cubed. And that's a 1, and that's a y to the 1 and y cubed, so you add to get a 4. F, we multiply. Again, that's understood to be multiplication. When a term is outside of a bracket like that with nothing in between, that's a multiplication. So that's a negative 50. 50 times negative 3 is negative 150. We have an a here, but no a there, so a don't change. We have a c, 1 and a 1, so that's c squared because we add 1 and 1. We have no b, so the b doesn't change. G, multiply these two. Negative 7 times negative 7 is 49. And we got an x, 1 and 1 makes x squared. We add. We got y squared and a y to the 1, so that's y cubed. And we got g cubed and g to the 4, so that's 7. 3 plus 4. And again, this is a multiplication understood to be outside this bracket. So negative times a positive is negative. 6 eighths are 48. We have x to the 4, x to the 1, so that's 5 when we add. And we have no more y's, so it's just y squared. So pause the video and work the 6 of these out to see if you're going to get them right. Press play. Negative 15 x squared y cubed. Only one x and one y, so they don't change. 3 times 7 is 21. We got a 1 and a 1, so that's a squared. We got a 1 and a 2, so that's b cubed. Because when you multiply, you add the exponents. This is we're multiplying here, so it's negative 8 times negative 2 is 16. 2 and 2, that makes 4. When you multiply these, you add. And there's a 1 and a 4 makes a 5. When you multiply, you add your exponents. Number 4, 2 times 6 is 12. A to the 5, 2 plus 3. B is 1 and 1, so that's b squared. And the c is 3, and there's a 1, so that's c 4. Don't have to put the 1s in. By now, you should notice that the exponent of that b is a 1. The exponent of that b is a 1. The exponent of that c is a 1. So you don't have to put them in. So this is 13x times. It's understood to be a multiplication. So that's a negative 130 times. And no x, no extra y, and no extra v. So we just stay x, y, v. And number 6, positive 12. Negative times negative is positive. And we got a 1 and a 1, so that's y squared. We have no more d's, so that's just d. And that's a 1 and a 5, so that's e6. When you multiply, you add. Now we have a triple. Notice here we have triple. So I'll work these out, or you can work them with yourself and pause, or I'm going to work these out, and then you can work these, or you can work them all out. Pause your video and work them out. When we have 3 of them, and they're all monomials, we'll go positive times a negative times a positive, so it's a negative because it's an odd number. 2 times 3 is 6, times 4 is 24. And I got an x times an x times an x, so they're all x's. So 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. So you do the same thing, we just got to be more careful. These are all monomials. Negative and negative, 3 negatives when you multiply is a negative because it's odd. 1 times 5 times 2 is 10. Notice that's a 1 there. And we got an x times an x times an x squared. So 1 plus 1 is 2 plus is 4. We got a y and a y and a y. 1 and 1 and 3 is 5. But when you multiply, you add your exponents. C, we have, let's multiply it. We have a negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 1 is 4 times 7 is 28, so positive 28. What I do is I multiply my signs first, then I multiply my numbers, and then I say, well, that's x squared times x, so that's 2, and 1 is 3. D, that's a 1, and that's a 1, so 1, so it's just a 5. Won't change. 1 times 1 is 1, times 5 is 5. We got an A, 1, 1, and 2, so that's a to the 4th. We got a B, and a B, and a B, so it's 1, 2, and 2, so that's 5. We have a C here, and we have no more C's, so the C won't change. So pause these, work them out, and play it back to see if you're right. Here we go. Negative times a negative is a positive. We got an even number. 8 times 3 is 24, times 1 is 24, positive 24. They're all x's, so 2 plus 1 plus 3 is 5. Oh, 5, yes. Hello. 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 plus 3 is 6. Anyway, I have one negative, so I'm going to get a negative. 2 times 6 is 12, times 3 is 36. A, and no A, so 1 plus 1 is 2. We got a 1, a 2, and a 4, so that's a 7. Remember, when you're multiplying, you add the exponents. So I multiply my number, I multiply my signs, I multiply my numbers, and I multiply my variables. Number 3, negative, and a negative is positive, even number. So it's 2 times 5 is 10, times 10 is 100. Done. We have a y and a y, so that's a y squared. We have an x squared and 1, so that's 2 and 1 is 3. Now some people might want to put the x first and the y second. It makes no difference because multiplication is associative. Remember, when you multiply, think about it. When you multiply 2 times 3 times 5, you can go 2 times 3 is 6, and then multiply by 5 to get 30. Or you can multiply you can multiply 3 and 5 to get 15, and then multiply to get 30. Or you may go 3 and a 2 and a 5. You may be able to rearrange them, because you'll still get 6 times 5 to get 30. Because they're all multiplications, you can switch them around whatever way you wish. Number 4, you got 1, 2, 3 negatives, so when you multiply you get a negative. You got an A and you got an A, so there's a 1 there and a 2 there, so there's A cubed. You got an F and an F and 3 F's, 1, 1, and 3. There's 1 plus 1 plus 3 is 5. You got an H, and you got 1 and 2 and no more, so that's 3. H, 1 plus 2 is 3. And you got an E, no E here. We got 1 E, 1 there, and a 7 there. That makes an 8. So notice, be careful picking all the letters up as you go through. Start here, pick up the A's, then the F's, and then the H's, and then keep going until you get them all done. Number 5, I got a negative times a negative is a positive. So I got 3 times 2 is 6, times 1 times 1, so that's 6. Remember, there are 1's in front. I got x here, and x here, so x, 4 plus 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. And I got 1y with no more to go with it, so it's y cubed. Number 6, I have an 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives, so it's a positive. Even number, when you multiply, even number of negatives, you get a positive. Odd number of negatives, you get a negative. 12 times 5 is 60, times 1 is 60, times 2 is 120. Positive 120. And I have an x and an x, so I have 1 plus 2 is 3. Just practice. Remember, when you practice, even when you finish these, you should go to your book and practice. Find if this is in your textbook or your teacher gives you exercise. Always do extra problems. And when you make a mistake, you should find out where your mistake is and keep it in your memory bank. Well, what about multiplying some fractions with the monomials? Well, that's easy. Multiply fractions, we have to cancel. So a half of 10 2 into 10 goes 5. So 1 times 5 is 5. And we got an x, and we add, we get a 5. And negative times a positive is a negative. And the 9 is over 1 note, and the 10 is over 1, so we cancel top to bottom. 3 into 3 goes once, 3 into 9 goes 3. So 2 3s gives me 6. Remember, when we multiply fractions, we cancel top to bottom. And we have x here and here. 4 plus 2 is 6. And we're multiplying these two. So negative times a negative is a positive. Multiplying fractions, so we cancel top to bottom. So I know it's going to be a positive, so I don't worry about the negative. 3 is a 1. 3 cancels. 2 into 2 goes once. 2 into 10 goes 5. So I get a positive 5. And I got a 1 and a 2 for the x, so that's a 3. And the y has a 1 and a 1, which gives me 2. We add the exponents. D, we're multiplying fractions. Remember, that's a multiplication. All, if I put brackets around this, that's the same thing. Multiply fractions, I cancel. 7s cancel once. 5 cancels into 10 2 times. 5 into 5 once. So that's 1 over 2. I got A, 2 plus 1 is 3. B, I got a 1 and a 1. So that's a 2. C is 1 and 1. So that's a 2. So I have A cubed, B squared, C squared. And practice these. Pause your video and work these out. There's 5 of them, or 3 of them here. We're going to get 5. When you multiply, negative times a positive is a negative. Okay. And we cancel. Top to bottom. 4s cancel. 3s cancel. So that gives me a 1, but I won't put the 1 in. Normally you don't have to. You can, but you don't have to. There's an A to the 5 because you add your exponents when you multiply. That's a 1 plus 4 is 5. So I could put a 1 there, but you won't see it. So if I did put a 1 there, I'm not wrong. But most teachers, most people would say that's negative A to the 5, B to the 5. Number 2, again, that's a multiplication understood. So double brackets or leave it. Negative times a negative is a positive. That's 15 over 1. So 5 into 5 goes once. 5 into 15 goes 3. So that's a negative times negative. That's a positive 6. That's an x cubed, and 1 is x4. And the y is squared, and 6 is 8. 2 y's there. Y times y. That's 6 y's there. Y times y times y times y times y. So there's 8 y's altogether. Number 3. Negative times a negative times a negative is a negative because it's an odd number of negatives. Now we multiply our fractions. So let's see, that's over 1. So the 2 cancels into 2 once. 2 into 12 goes 6. The 3 into 3 goes once. The 3 into 6 goes 2. So that gives me negative 2. I got an E and no E. So I got E. 4 plus 2 is 6. I got a G. I got a G squared, a G cubed, and a 1. So 2 and 3 and 1 is 6. And I have an H. 4 and 5 makes 9. So notice you can cancel when you're multiplying fractions anywhere from top to bottom. That brings us to the end of multiplying monomials. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned, or you're just reviewing what you already know. And if you do like the video, click on your like button. If you're not a subscriber, click the subscribe button. And if you haven't clicked the notification bell, because there's more videos coming. I'm always making new videos up. You may write a comment on my video if you wish. And my math website is mathfullyexplained.com. And you get information in 3 different sections. The section on me has my degrees and teaching experience. And my section on videos tells you about the teaching strategies you're going to use to help you learn your math. And the section on content has the units or the topics that I'm going to have on my YouTube channel. And it also has the number of videos in each of those topics. And the black font is what's online right now. And what's in the red font will be developed in the near future. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.